guys, it's Yanni. Welcome back to my channel. I'm doing another episode of Between the Pages and I'm so excited. You guys, I have been reading so many books. I don't even know what to talk about first. For this episode, I want to do books that I'm currently obsessed with. This is going to include some series that I have been reading recently and I just can't stop talking about them, so you're going to hear it too. Also, my highly anticipated reads of this year. My TBR currently has 106 books on it. Are we going to read them? I sure hope so, because it's a lot of exciting books. There are some new books that are a part of series that I've already read, so it's just a continuation. There's so many different book releases. I'm so excited. I wake up thinking about books. This is the best hobby I could have chosen. My first obsession is this one right here. The Shatter Me books have been on my TBR for honestly a couple months, and I just knew that Aaron was going to be my favorite MMC, and I kept on thinking about it, but I was at the library and I saw the book and I decided this is my time to pick it up. You guys, I literally picked up the first book and I blew through 8 books in the series. And honestly, it was within like a week and a half. I read 8 books. And this is including the novellas, which I really like the novellas because it shows different perspectives and the different characters that are in the series. So I don't know, like usually novellas, a lot of people ignore and they skip over them, but I feel like it's so necessary that it's in this series. Obsessed. Obsessed. And I'm obsessed. This series takes place in a dystopian world, and honestly, it kind of gives like Hunger Game vibes where they have different sectors, and our main character, her name is Juliet. She actually has powers, and her power is whenever she touches someone, they're gone. Okay, there's no more. And we start the book when she is in an asylum, and it just starts off like very dreary, very dark. When I first got into the book, I said, ooh, where are we at? What are we doing? I got a little bit depressed at the beginning of the book, but I said, you know what? I'm here for the MMC. I keep seeing him all over TikTok. There's a TikTok filter where it chooses your book boyfriend or book husband. And every single time I do that filter, I get Aaron. And I said, okay, so let's go meet Aaron. And, but the book, I really, really, really like how it's set up. The world is very bleak, very sad and dark. The author does a really good job of putting that into words and bringing it to life, and it makes it such an enjoyable read. You know, as a YA, I do enjoy YA books mainly because, you know, they're typically slow burns and you don't really focus too much on really the romance. You get like a lot of yearning, and I feel YA really does a good job of keeping the plot and also giving you just enough. Okay, it's just enough. It's not spicy, it's not too much, and that's what I really like about it. But as we're going through, I really realized that these books are fast paced, and I'm one by one, I'm just reading through them. It's like I can't put them down. I kid you not. I am borrowing this whole series on Libby. As soon as I get a book, I read it through, I return it very same day. I'm downloading the next book and I'm reading that one. I'm just sitting in one spot, just reading and reading and reading. In between what I'm doing, I'm getting up, doing chores, like whatever. I'm still reading. I'm walking around the house reading this book. And there's a point where I took a trip to New York, and the entire time that I was in New York traveling, I was consistently reading the book, and I read 5 books within a week. It's really just that good. And I will say that I'm obsessed. And Tahereh Mafi, amazing writer. I honestly feel like she doesn't have any misses. If you don't like this series, I don't know what to tell you because I'm a super fan. I'm obsessed with it actually. So yeah, I have about 4 books left. I know that there's another book that is going to get released, and I'm gonna have it somewhere on the screen, but I know that there's another book that's going to be released this year, and honestly, I have no doubt that I'm going to be able to finish the series within the next week because that's what I plan to do. As soon as I get done filming this, I will pick it right back up. One of my obsessions is a thriller duology. Yes, it was a duology that I read, and it's titled The Perfect Marriage and the Perfect Divorce. Loved it. I was not expecting to love it. I was actually in the middle of editing one of my YouTube videos, and I kind of wanted some like background noise, so I got the audiobook and I started listening to it. Oh my goodness. It was so gripping from the very beginning that I just could not stop. And I finished the first book within a day, and immediately I downloaded the second book and I finished that one the very next day. They're both so good. So The Perfect Marriage is about a couple and a husband and wife the husband actually gets caught with a mistress. Okay. And how he gets caught with his mistress is she wounds up. So he is the number one suspect in this case. His wife is a lawyer. Okay. She's a hustler. She is the breadwinner of this relationship. He's an author, but honestly, he hasn't sold a book in what, like 4 years or so. So she's pretty much taking on the financial load in the family. And something interesting happens. And I was very like taken aback. I mean, I feel like anyone would, her husband gets taken into custody. Her husband gets taken into custody and she's called down to the station. The first thing that she decides to do is be his attorney, and she defends her husband on this case for this homicide. The author does a really good job of putting a spotlight on each of the characters to where you don't know what's going on. And you keep suspecting different people might be the actual killer. And when you find out who the real killer is, oh my gosh, my jaw was on the floor. Like, even thinking about it, I got full body chills, right? And I moved on to the second book really quickly. I said, okay, maybe, usually the second book, we don't know how this is going to go. She got me again. Maybe I'm just that type of thriller reader to where I can never just guess it. I would say that it's probably very rare that I read a thriller book that I don't like. So I don't know, but I recommend this series to absolutely anyone. It's 5 stars, okay? Honestly, the second book is probably 6 stars because there's no way she got me again, and it's just that good. But I will say, after I finished reading the duology, I went to go look up what the author looked like because I was like, out of curiosity, and it's just like, whose brilliant mind could write a story like this? I looked her up and my heart like stopped because the author looks exactly like the main character. It's just one of those things where you're like, ooh, like it kind of caught me off guard, but I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I get it, girl. Yeah, love it. Oh my gosh. You guys, another one of my obsessions is Shield of Sparrows. Oh my goodness. This book was so good. It's not even funny. Like, it was just so good. Oh, wow. So, in Shield of Sparrows is actually about a princess who lives in a literal golden castle. She lives in a castle, and she's being forced to marry someone she doesn't want to marry. Ideally, her sister, although her sister was the youngest, was the one who was chosen to marry this prince. However, the prince showed up to the castle. He said, I want you. So, she leaves her home. She travels to this place. This prince is from, I want to say, uncharted territory, and everyone in the surrounding territories wants to know where he lives, and apparently he is hoarding some ancient artifact, some knowledge, whatever it is, and they want to get access to it. But he's very smart, and he is doing his absolute best to make sure that no one can touch his land or his possessions. And one thing I really liked about this story is that every time I picked it up, you just got transported into another world. Like, the world building was so beautiful. The different creatures that were in the story, amazing. The entire storyline itself, oh my goodness. I was curled up with this book literally every night. I could not wait to get home so I could pick it back up. It was so good. And once I finished it, I was really sad because I wanted it to continue. But good news, the second book is actually coming out this year. So I will be front and center when it gets released because I want to read it. I think it's called Rites of Starling. So good. Absolutely obsessed with it. Love it. Yeah. Honestly, I might end up reading it again. It was that good. All my obsessions are just 5 stars. So that's all you have to know. If you want to pick them up, I absolutely recommend any of these books that I'm talking about. Last but not least, there are a ton of books that I can continue to talk about until honestly the end of time. But my absolute favorite and current obsession is the Book of Azrael series. And mainly the storyline is amazing, but the thing about the Book of Azrael is the characters. The main characters are so good. I've never been as obsessed with a female main character as I have been with Diana and the main male character, who is Sam Kyle. They are the ultimate power couple. They're amazing. The premise of the Book of Azrael is that we basically we start the book in what I would say essentially is the underworld. Okay, let's talk about it. And our main character, Diana, the book is actually like funny because it starts off in the middle of a scene where she is torturing someone. And we get an idea of exactly who she is pretty quickly. We can understand that she doesn't start off from meek or weak beginnings. And I feel like a lot of books do this thing where The female main character, she has to step into her power and she has to become who she is. From the very beginning of this book, Diana was that girl, okay? And she remains to be that girl. So that's one thing I really, really like about her. She is an incredibly strong main character. And to this day, I would recommend this book to anyone, this series to anyone, because she's just that awesome. Essentially, this book starts with getting to know Diana, where she is, who she is, and why she's doing what she's doing. We learn that she only cares about one thing, and that one thing is her sister. She works hard and does all that she has to do to basically make sure that her sister remains safe. And the person who she works for is not a great character. Honestly, he sucks. And there's some discourse about whether or not Caden is great or would we like Caden. I never liked Caden from the very beginning. I still don't like him. And oh well. Oh well. He's morally black. And honestly, I've never really read a character who was just so evil and so consistently evil from the beginning. But I mean, that's what makes a good villain, right? They're true to their nature. Basically, Diana is being used as a weapon. She is very powerful. One thing I really do like is that she can transform. So she has her regular form, which is already crazy, but she can transform into a wyvern. And I think that's so cool. It's like just leveling up. Like, wow, it's just so cool to read and just to witness. But there is like a disclaimer of this entire series and this book is very gory. That's something that I was not expecting, but I kind of got over it pretty quickly because there's a theme. Like, okay, if Diana shows up, you're not surviving whatever it is. And if you are the person that Diana wakes up thinking about, you're not going to make it to the end of that day. She took care of business and she handled it. And it got to the point in the book where there were rumors circulating about her where the people would literally say that you hear a clap of thunder and then you would see her. And by the time you saw her, it was too late because you've met your demise, you know? And that clap of thunder was not actually thunder. It was her wings flapping so hard because she was moving so fast towards her target that by the time you heard her wings clap, you were done. And one thing about her being a very strong FMC is that she had mate that just honestly met her energy. Like he was all powerful and he was doing his thing, but she was such a solid, strong character that he didn't outshine her in a way. And he didn't have to basically pick her up all the time and try to convince her of who she was. Like she knew exactly who she was, what she wanted, and she went for it. And I feel like that's just awesome and inspiring and it's so refreshing to read. And I just love this story and I love her because of that. I'm also trying to tell these stories without giving away anything really substantial because if you then decide to read this book because of my recommendation, I want you to thoroughly enjoy it. And the only way to do that is to experience it yourself. The second book in the series after Book of Azrael is The Throne of Broken Gods. And that is a continuation of the story. I like that all the books focus on these two main characters. We have side characters, but they're not as important. This is an enemies to lovers book. And what I really like, me personally, I truly enjoy a slow burn. Like a burn so slow, it's excruciating. It's painful for the reader. Maybe for the writer as well, but and I got that. I got that. There was times where I literally wanted to throw the book because what are we doing? But it was so good the fact that it was such a slow burn because I don't even think they kissed until the end of the book. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm looking for. And honestly, it kills me sometimes when the enemies kind of turn into friends and they go back to enemies and they're like, oh, like when is it gonna happen? Whatever. But this author put it together so perfectly and I'm obsessed with it. There's times where, you know, it's like a back and forth where Diana has to go save her partner. Diana has to go handle business, you know? One thing that I really saw that in this book that I didn't see in any others is where her mission that she had to complete was so strong and her love for her sister was so strong that she literally did not let anything stand in her way. And it's so interesting seeing a morally gray female character that it kind of threw me off guard, but honestly in the best way. There's a point in the book where she has to kill one of her own friends. And although she didn't want to do it, she stuck to the plan because she knew I don't have a choice, you know? I mean, we all have choices, don't we? But wow, that truly, I was speechless. I was honestly speechless. And then that part of the book gripped me so hard that I just had to keep reading. Mind you, each of these books are like 800 pages, but I flew through all of them. I know that the series is not finished. I believe Amber, who's the author, she is coming out with a fifth book. I purposely chose not to read the fourth book because I don't want to be left on a cliffhanger and be losing my mind. So I'm leaving that for myself for a later date so I can slowly enjoy it. Most likely after she drops the next book so I can finish that one and go straight into it. But 10 out of 10, 6-star read. Absolutely recommend it. Yeah. Next thing I've been dying to talk about are my highly anticipated reads of the year. So, like I said, my TBR is 10 miles long, but that doesn't matter. Okay. I would say that I'm a medium paced reader, so I'm not too worried about that. What I'm worried about is what book do I choose next? Like, that's always the question on my mind. However, I refuse to ever be in a reading slump. I don't have time for a reading slump. There's millions of books out here that I have not read. Am I tired of reading? The answer is always going to be no, I'm not. So I will be picking up the next book at my next available time. So a lot of these books I don't have physical copies of, which is okay. As you guys know, I am a Kindle reader, so majority of what I do have is going to be digital. I mean, I fly through these books when they're on my Kindle like it's no one's business. And there's a lot of times where if I have a book, I just don't want to take it out of the house. So I'm going to have the physical copy at home, and then I'm just going to take it with me on my Kindle. Honestly, my first highly anticipated read, I should have read it before, but I feel like it's such an intense story, and it's going to be so soul crushing and so emotional that I just haven't stepped into it yet because I just don't think I'm ready for it. But I really, really want to read it. So it's like I go back and forth with myself, honestly, on a weekly basis, because I know that I want to read this book. But every time I get on the internet, I see someone crying over the ending, and I don't know if I'm ready for that. If you haven't guessed already, you probably know it's Alchemized. Okay. I've even went through the trouble of tabbing the book. I know what tabs I want to use for which topic. I just haven't read it. Well, I started reading the first chapter, and I know that, it can feel a little bit confusing. There's a lot of terminology that you have to read. You honestly have to create like a keyword sheet so that you can even understand what the author's talking about. But I really do like the complex writing. I like the whole premise of the book. I heard that it's a story that is loosely based on the Harry Potter realm or world. And it's a story about Draco and Hermione. There's a community out there that ship them. I did not grow up reading Harry Potter or was a part of the fandom, but I know that the author originally had released an online story that was titled Manacled, where she did use the names of the characters. And if you ask anyone from the fandom, they say that this story is nothing like Manacled, but it's still a really amazing and tragic story. I want to be careful and say that this book has romance in it, but it is not a romance book. It takes place in honestly, a post-apocalyptic war, and supposedly it happens in an alternate universe where Lord Voldemort, the villain of Harry Potter, actually wins in the end instead of Harry. Ooh. So now we have a bunch of like necromancers, different creatures, and it's very tragic, very sad. It's a lot of like war crimes, and I know that there are people who connect the lines of the story to real life events and things that are happening. And I feel that's why the story is very emotional, because a lot of people can either see themselves through the story or can relate in a certain way. And I think it's very beautiful how it's written. The fact that this is the author's very first book and it became so insanely popular is actually mind-blowing. I know that before 2026 ends, I will absolutely have read this book. I have it physically, I have it on my Kindle, I have it in the audiobook. So I have all bases covered. I have all my bases covered. My next highly anticipated read is The Will of the Many by James Islington. And this one was very random. I was actually in Target one day and I was browsing the book aisle. If I'm being honest, I can't ever go to Target and not at least glance at the books. It's become a problem actually. But I saw this book, and if I'm being honest, it was a gold foil that really drew my attention. But I realized that I don't typically read a lot of books that are written by men, and I like a high fantasy book. Personally, I do like romantasy and romance books. However, a good fantasy book in general, I'll never be against that. And it really intrigued me because the premise of the book is very similar, I will say, to Shatter Me. Of course, I haven't read it yet, so I'm not too sure, but there is an overruling hierarchy, and there are levels and different titles that people obtain. And apparently the main character of the book, he single-handedly is climbing his way up to the top so that he can destroy the systems that these people have created by himself. And there's just something really beautiful about that. I think I'm really drawn to these types of stories because it's just something so beautiful and so promising about someone who is starting from the very bottom, climbing their way up, where all the odds are against them, and yet they persevere and they succeed. You know, there's times in these stories where the outcome isn't what is expected, but it's what needs to happen. And it really reflects, to me at least, the human spirit and how, as human beings, our spirits are unbreakable. And if we care about something enough, and if we choose to put our minds to something and to do something, even if it's you against the world, it's possible. And I get that these are fantasy books, but it's just something so nice about reading stories like this, and I love it. I know that there are other male authors that I want to read, mostly because I kind of want to see the difference between female authors that write fantasy and male authors. And if I'm being honest, like, a lot of these books, they seem really cool. So, you know, I just want to check them out and see what's going on. Next two series that are highly anticipated are not surprising at all. Okay, the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas and Crescent City. And that is mainly based on the fact that she just gave us an announcement that after years of not releasing a book, she's going to drop 2 books. And that means by October 27th, when she says she's going to drop the next ACOTAR book, all this has to be done. And the reason I say that is because, according to the fandom, if you've read all of the books, these new books that she's going to release are going to contain little Easter eggs and just little fun tidbits that will make reading the new books way more enjoyable, especially if you've already explored the entire Maasverse. So I'm honestly overjoyed. I already knew that I wanted to read these books in particular, but now I have a timeline and I have a plan, and I plan on starting Throne of Glass April 1st, reading only that the entire month, and then moving on to Crescent City. I'm a little bit intimidated by Crescent City though, just because those books are like 1,000 pages each. And I'm like, how much more did we have to say? But honestly, I'm not mad because I know it's a masterpiece. I don't doubt that. And I'm very excited. I just know that there's a lot of world building. Honestly, that doesn't deter me from reading it at all. I'm excited to get into these worlds. I like that Crescent City is a bit more modern compared to her other works. So I don't know. I'm just really excited, and I can't wait to dive into those. This book right here, The Last Letter by Rebecca Yaros. I will say that Rebecca, we're still waiting on the next book in the Empyrean series. So we're going to need that book. We're going to need that book. But in the meantime, between time, I will be reading The Last Letter. I have been seeing people cry about this on TikTok. And honestly, that's the one thing that really drew me to this book, because there's times where I'm in a mood for a very emotional and heartbreaking story. There's times where I don't know why, as readers, we do this to ourselves, but we just want to feel the pain of a good book. So this is what it's for. I think that this is a book about like a military romance, where they're passing letters back and forth, and it gets really intense. Not too keen about this. This is pretty much like a blind read to me. So I'm not going to do too much research. It's not that big. So I'm just going to dive head first in, and we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens. The last few books I don't have physical copies of, but they're definitely downloaded. If I do happen to see a physical copy, I will make sure to grab it. I know that there's one of these books that I really want to own, and they seem really fun. I know it's a series, but Dungeon Crawler Carl. That story just seems so intriguing and so fun to read. Apparently, it's like this intergalactic game show to where a bunch of people like drop into the game, and it's based on popularity. So our dungeon runner, Carl, he basically is playing this game, and the only way that you really get through the game is not just really based on skill or your knowledge of it, if there even is a way to know it. You know, you're basically in this hole in the ground, and I think it's on a planet of its own, so everyone else is elsewhere in the galaxy and they're all watching you. And if you have fans or you're really popular in the game, you have an advantage because your fans can send you little boxes or gifts to help you win the game, and they want to see their favorite player win. So, you know, I guess at some point the players realize that this game isn't about skill, it's about popularity. And I think there might be some real world themes in there, and that's exciting. And it seems fun. I really want to read a fun, fast paced, I guess, sci-fi fiction book. So I'm really excited about that one, actually. Then we have Daggermouth. Daggermouth showed up on my feed and honestly seems very popular. I think it is a dark dystopian fantasy book with trials. So there's going to be, you know, real enemies to lovers in here, but it's going to be high stakes, and we love high stakes. Okay. Also, the reason why I really, really like Fourth Wing, those books are amazing because of that. There seems to be a theme of sci-fi, thriller, fantasy books going on, because another one of my reads that I'm really excited for is Red Rising. My goodness. So it's basically about a society that are labeled different shades of red, and on the hierarchy, depending on the shade of red that you are, I think they also have golds and silvers and whatever. It basically is what your status is in this society. And there's someone from the bottom who then decides to rise up. He's tired of the injustice. He's tired of being treated unfairly. And I just love an underdog. I like when someone can just decide enough is enough, and these people aren't going to treat me the way that I want to be treated. I'm just going to destroy the system. One thing that really drew me to this book was a line that I heard. And this line was so tough that I didn't have a choice but to add it to my TBR. I would have lived in peace, but my enemies brought me war. Just that alone, I said, oh, this is going to be a fire read, okay? He said he was going to let it slide. He was going to be fine living the life that he was living, but because his enemies decided to try him, he had to take it up a notch. And I can't wait to get into that book. I kid you not. Oh my gosh. Honestly, I think that just went up another notch on my TBR. I'm gonna have to like bump it up a bit because I desperately want to get into it. I think it's about 3-4 books. Well, I think it's 3 books and then maybe a couple novellas sprinkled in there. So we're gonna see, and I'm excited. My last highly anticipated read of this year is The Idiot by Dostoyevsky, and it is a classic book. This is definitely something that has been on my TBR for quite some time, but I am a little bit intimidated by the fact that it is a classic book. However, it's so intriguing that I just can't get it off of my mind. A quick synopsis is that it goes deep into the complexities of the human mind, human behaviors, and of the human condition, mental illness, and just the mind in general. I know a lot of people like to label Dostoevsky as a philosopher. Some things I would say he does a good job of portraying, and some things I think, you know, are left up to interpretation. This is an older book. Classics are not always correct, but I do think that it would be a really great story to read and something to just really probe my mind. It makes me look at the world differently. I love when I can pick up a book and by the time I put it down, my worldview has changed. And that's something that I kind of want to explore. And I think it's also really nice to basically travel back in time, reading a classic book and seeing a glimpse of what the world was like when it was written and the thoughts and patterns that were happening at that time in history. And yeah, so I see myself getting into a lot more classics, but I definitely want to start there. I think that there are plenty of Dostoevsky's books that I want to get my hands on and I am excited to explore. So if you guys have read any of my highly anticipated reads and have enjoyed them, if you hated them, honestly, if you have any opinions about any of them at all, drop them in my comments because I'm actually really interested to see what my audience is into, what you guys have tried, what you like, what you don't like. I just want to know what everyone's reading. If you have any suggestions, let me know because although my TBR is long, it can always be longer. Okay. And I sure will read all of these books. I read pretty fast. And like always, if you guys want to start a book club or if you just want to friend me, you can always add me on Fable. I'm on there every single day. I am writing reviews. I am adding new books. I'm changing things up. I'm always on there. So if you want to join a community on Fable, let me know. I will be more than happy to do so. Thank you guys for tuning into my video. I hope you guys like the new setup. I absolutely loved it and I had so much fun just yapping about books and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.